ever goes down. It goes up every year, in fact. It's a lie. Don't buy into the lies. I'm just telling you. Welcome back into the Marc Cox Show. A little later this hour, we're going to tell you about a way you can help out on Memorial Day. Volunteers are needed. Remember what Memorial Day is all about, to remember the people who've passed, who've fallen. And they need help. They need volunteers to pull this off. And we're going to have details on that a little later this hour. We've got our friend Mark Harder and someone from the American Legion in here to talk about that. So be sure and stick around for that. Right now, we have a special guest.
So, kick out the jams, kick up the soul, pour another glass of that rock and roll, turn up the band, find the hole, gonna lose control tonight.
Annie Frey joining us from, of course, the Annie Frey Show on the weekends here on FM News Talk 97.1, Saturdays, 5 to 7. You feeling better? Y'all recovered?
No, but I am feeling extremely better than I have been in the past.
That's good. You've still got that little cough.
Yes,
I
it's a
hear in
very
the background.
nagging, frustrating thing to deal with.
Sure it is.
Just like the Illinois Democrats. It's there, and it keeps existing, and you say, why are you there? Why won't you go away? And yet, it's there.
When you see some of the headlines that popped up in Chicago of all things, I mean, that's the amazing thing about it. The Chicago Tribune headline is Illinois Senate Democrats pass major tax hikes unlikely to become law. And the Chicago Sun-Times, unacceptable, yes, pathetic, too. And they've got a picture of Madigan and Rauner at the very top of the page. How do you deal with people in the face of a huge budget deficit who want to raise taxes $5 billion?
The average household in Illinois under this plan that the Senate passed yesterday, completely passed by Democrats. Not a single Republican senator in Illinois voted for this. Just so everybody is clear of who is voting how, and it passed 32-26. So there's 6 votes there that separate the two. So in 2018, when we get to elect some new people, think about that. You're 6 votes away from an $1,125 average difference per household per year, $1,125 more in taxes that they want from Illinois taxpayers on average. So if you're above that, you're looking at something even steeper. It is not sustainable. They separated this bill from any spending reforms. They wanted to pass it separately. And so here we have an ask for more money, and we have no promises, no guarantees for any type of spending reform whatsoever.
Oh, none whatsoever. You know, I ran some bites yesterday from Mick Mulvaney. Did you get to see any of his news conference yesterday when you were
No.
working? I know I
was working diligently on the 97.1 Talk.
She is working on our digital stuff in there too. But what I wanted to point out was something that doesn't get talked about enough in the budget, and that is whether or not you're being honest with people when you budget the way Washington budgets. Mm-hmm. And I thought this was one of the most truthful statements that I'd ever heard anybody say when it came to operating government at a deficit, which is what they've done in Illinois for, when's the last time they had a balanced budget there?
Decades, I believe.
Okay, listen to this.
If I take money from you and I have no intention of ever giving it back, that is not debt, that is theft. And if we're going to borrow money from people, we have to have a plan for how we're going to pay it back. And that's what this budget does. And that's one of the things that is new about this budget.
You don't pay it back by raising more taxes.
Right.
You cut your spending just like you would do in your household or I would do in my household.
Absolutely. If you are managing your own home budget and you have a hardship that comes across and you need to reconfigure things, nobody else cares. No creditor or person who's calling you to collect on a bill, nobody cares. At best, they might give you an extra 30, 60, 90 days to come, and reconcile, but nobody cares. And in the state of Illinois, they say, we got money. We can get this money. It's right there. We're one vote away from being able to take this money, but they're taking it from us. And they've shown gross mismanagement. It's like giving the keys to your 17-year-old teenager who's already gotten a DUI, and you're like, here, oh, but mom and dad, I promise I won't do that again. For your own good, keep the keys in your pocket. Do
Thank
not
you.
give the keys back to your belligerent teenager. And that's the way these people spend. They're ridiculous.
I had hope that maybe when I first saw these stories in the newspapers in Chicago, the Sun-Times, and that maybe what the story was is that they were actually, for once in their lives, honestly being critical of the Democrats in the state, but that's not what it is. They're angry. The liberals in Chicago are angry at Bruce Rauner that he won't come around on this.
It's very similar to how we see the narrative playing out on the national scale. If you say something enough and you hear it enough, you start to believe it's true. and what anybody in the state of Illinois who doesn't like Rauner will say is his job is to get a budget passed, and he hasn't passed a budget. Well, I, as a taxpayer in Illinois, do not want him to pass an unbalanced budget, and I also don't want him to balance the budget on my tax dollars when they're putting forth no effort to rein in the ridiculous spending of the people in Springfield. They're not making those efforts. And Senator Paul Schimpf, who's I've had on my show before, I had Senator Dale Ryder on this past weekend,
right? And
he was saying he's putting forth a bill to move state workers to 401k style pension plans, and that would start in 2018. They would be able to be in a retirement plan. There would be a provision for them. And I asked him, what about the people who are living on these pensions now that are being funded by the people paying into the system, just like Social Security?
Right.
And he said, you know what? We're going to have to look at that. We're going to have to fund that. We're going to have to do some stopgap. But the investment in that now is vital before we potentially look at going bankrupt. And then it's poof, it's gone.
He's frightening to people in Illinois because he's talking about responsibility.
Yes.
Here's the criticism in the Chicago Sun-Times, just to give you an idea. That Governor Bruce Rauner and the Illinois House and Senate would allow Illinois to stumble through yet a third year without a budget is beyond irresponsible. Instead of pointing out that the House Speaker Madigan and the Senate refused to cut cost. They refuse to cut expenses at all, and all they want to do is raise taxes, should drive these liberals crazy. But progressives, they're just detached from reality. They don't care.
The actual amount of time that the Illinois House has been in session in May is less than 6 hours.
Is that right?
6 hours.
For the whole month?
For the whole month. But they had a Senate House softball game where they got uniforms and there were cheerleaders involved. I mean, these are the priorities of the people who think that the answer to their problem is in my pocketbook. And what Illinoisans are saying, north, south, east, and west, is I'm done. This, everybody is reaching their own individual final straws, and they're going elsewhere. Indiana, Missouri, everywhere you look around the state of Illinois are freedom-loving states saying, come on over.
That's right.
And it's so easy to do.
The Policy Institute, yesterday we had a guy on who told us that's the millennials are the biggest group that are leaving Illinois. That's the brain trust. That's a brain drain on them.
Yeah, and as I'm an older millennial myself. I'm at the top end of that generation. But the people who are my age are the future money makers that are going to fund all of these things that the Senate and the House wants to be funded in the state of Illinois, all these entitlements. We are the people, we are the future of the funding of the Illinois government. The people who are older are the ones who are going to be needing what the Illinois government can provide with the stuff, all the health insurance and all the stuff that goes through there. If we're leaving, how do they sustain? And if all the taxpayers continually look at what the actions of Springfield are and see that they have no responsibility for anything that goes on there, and they feel that all the responsibility is on the taxpayer, they're digging themselves into a hole they will not be able to get out of.
Illinois' situation is a microcosm of America right now.
It is.
When you look at the budget that this administration's tried to roll out, that Paul Ryan says he's interested in implementing, but that in reality, we know there's no way that'll ever get through the House and the Senate because of this ingrained attitude that every year funding for every program has to go up 5 or 6%. And if it only goes up 3%, they scream like their left leg has been cut off. It's crazy, but it's pervasive in Washington. It's pervasive in Springfield. And, for all the talk of draining the swamp,
yeah,
that's a great example of it right there. That's major part of the problem.
It is. Every time we put people into office to represent us who want to expand government, if you are going to get to the part on the other side of that person's time in office and say, I think we need to retract government a little bit, it is exponentially harder to retract and put it back in the box. In some cases, it's not even possible. And I fear that Obamacare is one of those things where the massive expansion of government that was involved in creating something like government-controlled healthcare, it's not easy to get back, which is why these elections do have consequences. They are so important. And even in the state of Illinois, get a Republican in the House of Representatives. Get Madigan's majority taken away from him. That's crazy, but we got 5 seats in the last election. We can get more.
Sure.
And for the Senate, it's not impossible. The state is red except for that northeastern corner.
That is a question that Steve had. He's been holding for a while. Steve, you're on the air with Mark and Annie.
Hey, how you doing, Mark?
Good,
Hi,
thanks.
Annie, how are you?
Hello, good.
Hey, that's kind of where I was going to go with this. I was wondering, I was listening to something on a news break or whatever with Hannity talk about if Trump is successful and he runs again, he could very well get 40 states, which I agree he could. I'm looking at this, and I'm listening to how Illinois, again, wants to raise taxes on the people that are stuck there. The people that survive in Chicago, we'll just put it that way, and the people are left stuck in Illinois. At what point does it become a breaking point for them and say, you know what, we're going to stop voting for these people, and we're going to start putting some people with common sense in their mind? And from what I'm gathering, it's been slowly happening, which is good.
Yeah.
I just wish it would happen a little bit faster.
I completely agree with you. And Bruce Rauner is very indicative of moving in that direction because he won. When Quinn won before Rauner, he only won 3 counties in the entire state, and 2 of them he won by 100 votes or less. So it's a matter of infiltrating Chicago and getting a higher percentage of people to understand that. But I think that we're moving in that direction, but we have to be diligent and keep pushing.
Oh, that's a good point. Steve, good point. Annie, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
So glad you're feeling better. Great to get your point of view on all of this. Listen to Annie every Saturday night from 5 to 7 here on FM News Talk 97.1. All right.
you.
Quick break.